It's Monday, and it's a great day to be alive. I just want to say a couple of things before I get into today's video. We're coming off of Thanksgiving weekend, Thanksgiving week. So I think it's important that we remember what we're thankful for. Sometimes it's easy, we get through the holidays and we forget. Somebody cuts you off on your way to work and you're right back into being angry and forgetting about all of the things that you have to be thankful for. So let's make sure that you don't forget. Our video today, someone asked me a question about anger. And this has probably been about 3 weeks ago, and I've been kind of mulling it over and giving it some thought. And this could be this could be more than one video. I try to keep these videos short, so I don't know if I can cover all this in one video. But here's what I want to talk about. And I say this all the time. If you know my story, if you know my background, then you can understand I've had a lot of reasons to be angry. My mom was taken away from me at an early age. My father wasn't there for me. I was abused by my foster mom and locked inside of a closet. These are all things that I can tell you for years I was angry about. I carried that anger with me for a number of years, and I believe that it played a part in me going to prison. So let me talk about something. Because in order for me to grow, I had to try to find a way to move past the anger. And I want to start with this. If you have things that you're angry about, getting past that anger, moving past that anger and living your best life, because as long as you're angry and you carry that anger and resentment around with you, you will never live your best life. Here's how you begin to move past that. It starts with forgiveness. It's very simple. Moving past your anger begins with forgiveness. Now, before I move forward, I want to explain something. If we're unable to forgive, oftentimes that anger then turns into bitterness. And I'm going to tell you something. Bitterness becomes a silent killer. Not only of you, but of relationships, friendships. So you've got to be able to move past that anger and forgive. If not, you run the risk of becoming bitter and not living your best life. Let's talk about forgiveness for a moment. I said it, and I'll continue to say this. For a number of years, I struggled with forgiveness. I'm just a man. I struggled because I was so angry. But on the flip side of that, I needed to be forgiven for things that I had done. How is it that I can expect, or that I can ask someone to forgive me for things that I've done, but I can't forgive individuals that have slighted me or that have done things in my mind that were wrong? It doesn't make sense. In order for me to receive forgiveness from people that I've wronged, I have to be willing to forgive the individuals that have done things to me. Now, how do you do that? How do you begin to forgive? And I want to make sure that as you're listening to this video, any ideas, make sure that you chime in, because this is an open conversation. Here's how I begin to forgive. Mrs. Alexander for abusing me. My father for abandoning me. For a number of years, I blamed my father. I felt that if he had been in my life when my mom lost custody, if he had been there, I would have gone to live with him instead of being placed in the foster home. And then in my mind, I would have never been abused. So in my mind, it was my father's fault. So I was angry. But my forgiveness, here's where it started. I had to try to seek to understand. See, I didn't know much about my father. I didn't know much about how he grew up. But in my mind, I had to try to understand that maybe my father couldn't give me something that he didn't have inside. See, you can't squeeze a grape and get orange juice. Maybe my father had gone through some things in his life that made him incapable of really giving me the love that I deserved. Now, that may not make sense to you, but for my anger not to turn into bitterness, I had to try to understand and make sense of it. So that was the best thing that I could do, was try to understand that perhaps my father had gone through some things growing up that didn't allow him to give. Maybe Mrs. Alexander, same thing. Maybe she had gone through some things in her own childhood. Maybe she had been abused herself. So that's the only thing that she knew how to give. Now you might be looking at me like, fool, you have lost your damn mind. But what I'm explaining to you is this was the process, the only process that I knew that I could use in order to make sense out of the things that had happened to me. This was the only process that I knew in order to move past the anger and move into forgiveness. Because I don't know where Mrs. Alexander is. And my father died in the prison. So I can't go to them and demand an apology. I'm never going to get it. So if I don't forgive them, and that lack of forgiveness turns into bitterness, then you run the risk of blaming someone else, of taking that anger out on someone else who's trying to love you. You take that pain and that anger and that frustration out on that individual, and you miss out on receiving the love or whatever it is that you really deserve. So I'm going to recap really quickly. For me personally, and I'm speaking just about my own life, in order for me to move past my own anger, I had to learn to forgive, as hard as that was. What helped me to forgive was I needed to first seek to understand. We all come with our own baggage. So seek to understand first. If you find any value in this video, please like, please comment, and please share. And if you have anything to add, please put it in the comment section below. We'll see you next week.